Uh, it's 7:05.
Okay, good afternoon, friends. See, for the last 10-15 days, or say since I think 28th of April, there has been a discussion on this new CERT guidelines, which has been issued under the Information Technology Act. Since the Information Technology Act and Data Protection Act are very closely interrelated. In fact, currently Information Technology Act is the Data Protection Act of India. What is stated in this certain guidelines is also relevant for all of us as privacy and data protection professionals. So as always, the guideline has evoked immediate opposition from one section of the professionals led by certain media vehicles, including the Economic Times, the Media Nama. They are all publications which always look for criticizing whatever guidelines come from the government. And so it is not surprising that on certain guidelines also there has been some kind of say criticisms. So we felt that it is necessary to discuss the guidelines, what exactly it contains, and how does it impact the life of a data processing organization. That is the purpose of this particular interaction. Before we actually get into discussion, it is not possible to get into discussion without actually going through and understanding what is the current situation. Because I am aware that a lot of people have not looked into Information Technology Act as deeply as they do with the data protection regulation. So, data protection regulations, either GDPR or the Indian law. So that's why we need to actually understand the background of this particular legislation before we go into the analysis of the guidelines. Now, because of that, we will just look at the role of CERT and then what are the obligations of CERT under Information Technology Act, which is the legislation. It is not a notification or a guideline or an order, administrative order. It is the law of the land, which was amended in 2008 and effective from 17th October 2000. Subsequent to this act having been notified, there have been several rules. One rule was rule of 2014, which is dated 16th January 2014. Then there was an order of 2016 dated 26th April 2016. Further order of 2017 dated 4th January 2017. And now the directive has come of 28th April 2022. So this is not something which has just come out of the blue. This has been there for the last several years, at least you can say from 2017 in this almost the same form, and from around 2014, more or less indicating all the requirements of this. And even today, the government or the CERT has also issued a FAQ document to explain to people what exactly this directive means. Okay, because people are not able to understand the plain statements made in the notification. So now they have given a very, very detailed FAQ also on this. Now, when you look at the role of CERT, we must appreciate that it is the apex organization in India statutorily designated to maintain cyber security and also appropriately empowered under Information Technology Act. It is the CISO of CISOs. Every organization which is into cybersecurity should recognize that CERT actually is a super, say, CISO applicable to all organizations. That is what has been stated in the law. It actually started initially as a department of the Ministry of Information Technology somewhere on 19th January 2004. At that time, it did not have a good statutory, you can say, status, but it was given statutory recognition with the amendment of Information Technology Act, which became effective from not 17th October, 27th October 2009. The amendment is called 2008 amendment, but actually the effect of that was from 27th October 2009. Now, the Information Technology Act states, that is this 2008 version, I'm actually looking at three important sections, section 70, 70 capital A and 70 capital B. Now, under section 70, the amendment to the earlier section 70 actually defined what was called the critical information infrastructure. And it was meant to represent any computer resource, the incapacitation or destruction of which shall have the debilitating impact on national security, etc. This is how it has been defined. And I have in another place suggested that this definition can be used for defining critical information under the Data Protection Act also, because under the Data Protection Act also, you can always say that any information processed by a critical information infrastructure will be the critical information as per Data Protection Act. That will have certain say meaning in terms of regulating the data protection regulations. So this critical information infrastructure was defined, and then this section 70A said central government may notify by notification designate an organization as a nodal agency for the purpose of critical information infrastructure. And then it went on to say that CERT will be the nodal agency. So by these three sections, CERT attained a statutory status and became responsible for supervising the critical information infrastructure, which there is no need that it has to be only the government infrastructure, it could be others. But it still had to be some kind of infrastructure which had a special status in terms of security. So it did not apply to all the IT systems, which of course our present directive we are trying to say that will be applicable. How this extension of the section powers to supervise a critical infrastructure came into all intermediaries, all data centers, etc. We can read through the regulations which followed this section 70B. In fact, 70B subsection 4 actually sets out the responsibilities of the CERT. And remember, we are talking of the law, that is section 70B of an act. And it says it shall serve, that is the CERT shall serve as the national agency for performing collection, analysis, and dissemination of information on cyber incidents. So this is one of the important responsibilities. Forecast and alert cyber security incidents, take emergency measures, coordinate cyber incident response activities, issue guidelines, etc. Now, see, you cannot manage the security of only the critical IT infrastructure without observing what is happening in the IT infrastructure as a whole. So if a virus has come to company A, tomorrow that virus can affect the critical IT infrastructure. That is why CERT has got the powers of collection, analysis, and dissemination of information on cyber incidents, not restricted only to the government say systems. Then under this subsection 7, it said that any service provider, intermediaries, data centers, body corporate, or any other person who fails to provide the information called for or comply with the direction shall be punishable with imprisonment up to 1 year and fine. And of course, the power to prosecute was with only the certain Director General. Okay, so it said that there is a responsibility which included collection of cyber incident reports or information, and it also said that if I give you a directive and if it is not followed, then there could be a criminal prosecution possible up to 1 year of imprisonment. And Information Technology Act has section 85, which says any criminal liability of an organization can be extended to the officials who are in charge of the business. So therefore, when you say 1 year imprisonment, that 1 year imprisonment can be to the CEO of the organization who fails to actually send response to any directive. It could also be to the CISO, or it could be also to any person in charge of the business. So it is because of this that certain directives have to be taken with a lot of respect. It cannot be neglected by any company. Now, of course, certain can initiate prosecution, and by actually they have to file an FIR with the police, and the police will have to take it and then take it later to the court, and the court will decide whether this 1 year imprisonment should be there or not. But cognizance of this offense will be taken only by a complaint of certain, and police cannot directly take any action. At the same time, certain Director General can also lodge a complaint with the Adjudicator of Information Technology Act, in which case the civil penalties can be invoked. See, this is possible because the Information Technology Act provides the adjudicator a power to suo motu start an inquiry and apply fines, particularly up to 5 crores under his jurisdiction. And that penalty will be appropriated by the adjudicator and then distributed later on to the persons who have suffered a damage. Where there is no complaint from any member of the public that he has suffered a wrongful loss, this money collected can be set aside for certain future deployments of people coming and claiming the money. So this provision can be imputed to the current Information Technology Act, Section 46, the powers of the adjudicator, along with whatever notification has been there. And even before the Data Protection Authority of India is in place, certain Director General jointly with the adjudicator is there in every state. So a certain Director General along with the adjudicators in different states can together apply both civil and criminal, you can say, liabilities on organizations which fail to follow the directives of the certain. And since this directives of certain is meant to secure the breach of data, we are really talking of a data breach situation, which is a cyber crime situation where there are people who have suffered some financial loss. And in that situation, we have the possibility that the certain Director General and adjudicators can combine together and actually do what we expect the Data Protection Authority of India may do in case of breach of personal data. Maybe the Data Protection Authority can go up to 4% or 2% of the turnover, which the adjudicator cannot do. Adjudicator's limit is only 5 crores. Beyond 5 crores, of course, the claim has to be settled by an appropriate court. But this power is available and it can be exercised by this certain Director General. Then on 16th January 2014, a detailed rules was notified. And in this rules, of course, the links to all these things you can see from naavi.org if you want. but I am only trying to provide here the essential aspects. Now, this 2014 circular, it is referred to as 2013 rules. The rules are dated 13, but actually it was issued with effect from 16th January 2014. Now, it defines the term cybersecurity, it defines cybersecurity breach and cybersecurity incident. These are essential to interpret this 28th April notification. For example, the definition of cybersecurity is protecting information, equipment, devices, computer resource, communication device, and information stored therein, which means that it is both protecting the soft information as well as any equipment which is designed to hold that information. And the protection is from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, and destruction. So this is the definition of cyber security. And then there is a breach and there is an incident. The incident is in a suspected adverse event. Breach should actually result in a compromise. So there is a degree of difference between an incident and breaches. In the 28th April circular, we are talking of reporting of incidents, which may or may not be breaches. But there is a provision in the Act for the organization to define what is a cyber incident, so that the normal cyber, events, which like this targeted scanning and other things, which people say that there are hundreds of such things every day, how can I report it, or kind of a thing. By properly defining what the organization considers as cyber security incident as different from cyber security breaches, it is possible, in my opinion, to ensure that nuisance responses can be reduced. So you don't have to report a very targeted scanner which your IDS perhaps discovers and logs it. But the logged information may have to be retained. But in terms of reporting, there could be some difference between a cybersecurity breach and cybersecurity incident. We must observe that in 2016, CERT was given one more power, that is under the section 69B, where the committee headed by the minister, Home Ministry, either at the center or the state, the Secretary of the Home Ministry, who can actually issue directions for interception of computer systems, including networks. Most of the notifications on Twitter and other things are issued under the section 69B. Now, in such cases, CERT will be the authorized agency to monitor and collect traffic data or any other information generated, transmitted, etc. Okay, so we have got 69, 69A, and 69B giving powers to the Ministry of Information Technology Secretary and the Home Secretary. In all these cases, CERT will be the agency which will actually be implementing the directions between the authority which issues the directions and the company. So certain directions or powers have got enhanced after this 2016 circular. Then in 2017, CERT issued a small order wherein it's listed certain cybersecurity incidents and said they have to be mandatorily reported to CERT as early as possible. This as early as possible has now been translated into 6 hours. And this list, at that time, 10 items were given as a list, which had this targeted scanning, compromise, unauthorized access, defacement, malicious code, attacks, identity theft, denial of service, and attacks on critical infrastructure, attacks on e-governance. All these are also there in the current system. By defining these 10 different security incidents, CERT actually expanded its role of monitoring the security incidents related to the government organizations or whatever can be called as critical IT infrastructure to almost everybody else, because the identity theft, distribution of distributed denial of service, SCADA systems, wireless networks, e-governance, e-commerce, they are all mentioned here in such a way that certain can say that it has the right to seek information from even the private sector systems. So that is what has been mentioned here under the 2017 order. Now coming to this 28th April 2022, it appears that looking at the opposition being faced by the data protection regulations, which are getting delayed, maybe the ministry thinks that it is time to actually use the current provisions of the Information Technology Act for cyber security, because cyber security includes personal data security. So I think there is a thinking going on in the ministry that let people do whatever they want to stop this Data Protection Act. We have enough powers under the Information Technology Act to protect not only personal data, but also non-personal data, and we shall use it to the extent required, because cybersecurity is like a statutory responsibility cast on this CERT. So therefore, they have even made a mention of this expedient in the interest of sovereignty, integrity, etc., so that nobody can question this particular directive in the Supreme Court, saying that this is disproportionate, etc., because they've anticipated that somebody will go to Supreme Court and say that this will affect the constitutional rights section, Article 21. So they have included the exception given in the Article 19(2) into this guideline as a part of the preamble. I think it is a good precaution they have taken. Other than that, what they have stated here, which is the subject matter which we can discuss, is one is time synchronization. They want all network systems to be synchronized with some proper time source. They have indicated some sources from India, which is the NIC or NPL source, but they have also given a provision that those entities which have ICT infrastructure spanning multiple geographies, which are the MNCs, they may use accurate and standard time source other than NPL and NIC. So some of the objections which some media people had raised, that how can MNC be asked to connect to NIC, it will become a breach of security, etc., doesn't hold water. There is a lot of misinformation in the media. One has to be very careful in understanding what is real and what is fake, even when such articles appear in otherwise considered reputed media vehicles. Now, as far as the reporting is concerned, it says that within 6 hours of noticing the incidents, it has to be brought into the notice of cyber CERT, for which an email address is given, a fax address is given, and we all know that the recognition of a cyber security breach normally takes time, and some surveys say 270 days is the average time required for an organization to detect a cyber security breach. What this act, this particular direction says is, the moment you come to know, even if it is after 200 days, within the next 6 hours, please let me know what is happening. And you can always, in fact, in the latest FAQ, they have further clarified that if you don't have all the information which is required for reporting, don't worry, give what is presently available, and then you can always supplement it with others. So the objection that the 6 hours is something which is draconian. GDPR says 72 hours. How can any Indian organization go beyond what GDPR says? Because GDPR is the gold standard. These are arguments which are not agreeable. because we are talking of a cyber security incident. The earlier it is known to the central apex organization, better it is for them to take some action. Whether they take action or not, we don't know. It depends on their capability, and it also depends on the cooperation the organizations, the industry provides to them. But in principle, if there is an apex security organization, all incidents have to be reported to them so that they will know what is happening across the Indian scenario, whether this is an isolated security incident in one company, or is it an attack from, say, China or some other state actor, which is affecting simultaneously several organizations, either in a particular industry or generally. So that information can be analyzed only if it is collected by one single agency. And that is why they are saying that you please report it within 6 hours by an email, whatever information which is there. So beyond this, there is no need to say that it is not possible. The moment the breach is noticed, most of the organizations will have a governance committee to which it is reported, and they may have immediate online meetings to decide what has to be done, starting with whether we should first of all stop our servers, then look at what is happening, that kind of a thing. And at that time itself, you can always send an email to the CERT saying that we have noticed something which we are analyzing further, but this is what has happened. We have observed some unusual transactions which could be considered as incidents. So that is something which the organization should be able to do. And once that report is sent, and if the CERT makes an order, the organizations are mandated to take whatever directions are given on that count. For this purpose, the directive reiterates that there has to be a point of contact. Why I say reiterate is, ever since the Information Technology Act became effective since 2000, under different provisions, government is saying that you should have a compliance officer and you should have an audit once in a year about your ITA 2000 compliance. And there should be some nodal officer who has to be available for dealing with any queries from the government. Most of the companies have not designated a person as an ITA 2000 compliance officer. It may be attended to by the CISO or somebody, but there is no proper designated person. So they have now reiterated that there has to be a point of contact. And what is the information we have to share about the point of contact has also been given: the name, the designation, organization's name, office address, email ID, mobile number, office phone, and office fax. So very simple form which can be submitted to the organization, to the CERT, so that you will be able to create a sort of a connect with the CERT body. The other more important guideline which has been given is the maintenance of logs. One is, all ICT systems, first of all, you should enable the log, and that log has to be maintained for a period of 180 days. And you don't have to submit it to the CERT on a continuous basis. As and when there is an incident which is being reported, at that time, whatever is the log record relevant to that device or which is a part of that breach, that alone need to be provided to CERT. And if CERT wants more information, they will always ask you, so that within the next 180 days, whatever information is available with you, you can share with them. If some company says, I don't want to maintain log because it costs money, then they have to rethink whether they should be in the business of digital say transactions. Because if you cannot manage security, you don't have the right to be in this particular business, endangering the community. Now, the other thing which this act, this particular notification says is, that these service providers of various kinds, if they are providing some kind of a service to a subscriber who is, of course, like a individual person, like most of the web-based services, such organizations need to keep a record of validated names and of the subscribers. So no creation of fake accounts should be permitted. You should have a validated name of the subscriber and other details of period, then IP addresses allotted. This may apply to all these hosting service providers, email address and IP address and timestamp used for at the time of registration, because if a crime happens later on, they may use a lot of proxies at the time of committing the crime. But when we go back to the date of registration, most probably that would have been done with an IP address which is more reliable. So certain information of the subscribers need to be recorded and kept for a period of 5 years. Again, this has to be kept there, and only when it is required, CERT will ask. Then there is a mention that virtual asset service providers should also look at the identification of their subscribers at a level which it can be called as KYC, particularly in the instances of these payment systems and other things. So this also has to be kept for 5 years along with the registration records. Then we come to transaction records. It says that you have to maintain transaction records in such a manner that the individual transaction can be reconstructed if required. It should not be just a text record or something like that as a log record, but if necessary, you should be able to reconstruct the event so that in the case of any investigation, it will help. So probably one has to see how they have to keep the all the elements of the log records so that you will be able to recreate the particular incident. Now, coming to the types of cybersecurity incidents, I told you that the 10 things which were already there in the 2017, they are continued to be there. And to that, they have added 10 other types of security incidents, like attacks on IoT, attacks affecting the digital systems, fake mobile apps, attacks through fake malicious mobile apps, unauthorized access to social media accounts. So some of the things which are observed today in many of the cyber crime incidents, they have tried to add it here. This should be considered as an indicative list of incidents, and it may undergo further changes. And when you are reporting, the report initially at least should have this time of occurrence, information regarding system which has been affected, what symptoms have been observed which makes you think it is an incident, and whatever relevant technical information is to be provided. In fact, they have given a reporting form also, so that when we are talking of security infrastructure, the name of the OS, etc., all to be given. So there is a very clear guidance on what needs to be done. Even if you take this incident form, it is not something which is too elaborate and it requires days to prepare. I think most of it is already available with you, because we expect that most responsible organizations maintain an inventory of their systems, and therefore these things should be already available with them. So even within 6 hours, it should be possible to provide this information. Now, if CERT wants, it will analyze the information and it will designate a team to assist the concerned system administrator, and then try to provide you some kind of an advice on how to contain, eradicate, and how to recover the information. See, all this guidance is coming from CERT, but you must understand that CERT has the support of 2 committees. We call them as advisory committees. For example, the first advisory committee consists of the secretary, joint secretary that's there. The representation from IISC is also there. And that actually provides guidance to the Director General. Then whenever an incident is reported and some kind of response has to be mandated, there will be a review committee, and this review committee has several secretaries. So it is not that one single person called Dr. Sanjay Bal will be able to issue instructions. He has to necessarily consult a few people before the order is issued, and even when a report of a breach is there, at that time also a review committee has to document some action. So we can say that the instructions coming out of the Director General should have some kind of weightage. Okay, we don't expect everybody to be as intelligent as some of the professionals working in organizations. So a CISO may feel that I know more than what Sanjay Bal may know, but that is there. We always say that we know better than the minister or something like that. But still the minister has the power. Likewise, CERT has the power, and we have to necessarily follow his advice. And if we have any different opinion, CERT has never said that you cannot come back to me with your own suggestions. We will definitely be happy to perhaps work on that. Now, in the last few days, looking at various responses, now an FAQ has been issued. This FAQ is not a legal document. It is only an explanatory document, and that they have made it clear in the document itself. And they have also said that this is an evolving document. And there is a separate annexure which explains these types of cybersecurity incidents to be reported, to the extent that whatever doubts are there can be clarified. Now, the implications of non-compliance, I have already indicated that there could be criminal consequences, and that can go beyond the company and touch the professionals. So one has to be careful. And I am sure that there are powers through which certain director can invoke civil penalties also, but so far nothing of this nature has happened. So far in the 20 years of existence of Information Technology Act, and since 2004 CERT came in, and 2009 it gains statutory powers, no single adverse decision has been initiated on any of these things. So there is no reason to fear that CERT will start bossing over us. We have to see how this new administrative system will work. Now, post DPA 2021, we know that data breach notifications will have to be submitted both to the Data Protection Authority and to the CERT. And Data Protection Authority has the power to impose penalties up to 4%. So probably CERT and DPA will develop some kind of a coordination where maybe the DPA will look at personal data breaches, and CERT will continue to work under the non-personal data breach. In fact, in the FAQ, they have clarified once again that CERT also has got powers. So Information Technology Act is not going to vanish when DPA 2021 comes. And even if DPA 2021 does not come, ITA 2000 will be the DPA 2021. It will substitute the requirement of DPA 2021. So the CERT director will coexist with the DPA. DPA may be more powerful because it's a 6-member organization, far more, you can say, represented widely, whereas we always look at CERT as a department of a ministry, but actually it is no longer a department of ministry, it is a quasi-judicial authority. So just as a person called T.N. Sheshan revived the status of the Election Commission from being a department to a powerful house, if there is a proper Director General of CERT, which we have not so far perhaps found, there can be a very powerful quasi-judicial organization which can actually stand and compete with DPAI, and probably companies will have to learn to manage with this organization. So this is basically some information which I wanted all of you to be aware before we go into actual discussions. Now we will look at some questions which may be already there, or otherwise we will take the questions. Okay.
Some of the questions already in the chat window, sir.
Yeah, we will first exhaust that and then open out the gallery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Reena Bengiri says that what is the background thought process to roll out? Can we expect PDPB will be enacted soon? See, as I was explaining to you, there is a section of the public or the industry which does not want DPA to be made into a law. But at the same time, there is a pressure on cyber security. Everybody wants security, but not Data Protection Act. But if you don't protect the personal data breach as envisaged in Data Protection Act, probably you will not be addressing the data protection or cyber security requirements in a proper way. The two cannot be completely distanced. They are all intermingled. So, as I was telling, once the DPA comes, certain, if it remains what it is now as a department of MIT, then people will start disregarding this. So I think they have now taken a decision that no, I also have the power. I have to make people know that I have the power. Secondly, if DPA is going to take another 2 years to come, somebody else has to work on cybersecurity. That is why I think they have started working more rigorously than they were doing earlier. That is the only logic I see why they have suddenly woken up into this kind of a power. Now, one of the concerns Deepak Vardhe says is 9:30 to 6:30, 8 p.m. if there is an incident. See, I always understand that security is a 24/7 operation. So the organizations will need to have the first response and contact the CISO, even if it is outside the office hours. I don't think there is a thing. Maybe he will not take a detailed view because he also needs to make an assessment. So he will perhaps say there are many instances of cybersecurity where you have to disconnect your server. At least such discussions will have to be done with the CISO immediately. And if so, what I am trying to say is that a simple email can be sent within that 6 hours time span to the CERT saying that we have noticed some abnormalities which are being observed, and then we will be reporting the second level report will be sent to you tomorrow or something like that. I think CERT will accept such things without much of a problem. Mahendra Lemaye, yes, show that certain exists. Yes, it is possible. One of the reasons could be this, but let us give them a real, some more positive intent. Okay. Not all organizations have 24/7. Okay, that I would like others to respond. How many of them maintains 24/7? So we'll take it up in the discussion. Okay, there are concerns for delaying the guidelines. Yes, I think there is. People are working in such a manner that by raising concerns about Information Technology Act, need to revise this law because from 2008 we have not done. They are actually trying to delay DPA 2021. But remember, let us say DPA 21 does not come. Then it means that ITA 2000 section 43 capital A remains. And section 43 capital A covers everything you want to cover under the DPA 2021. And maybe the regulatory factor is weak. And I am suggesting now that CERT and adjudicators, if they combine together, they will be reasonably powerful for implementing any penalty and other things. So by delaying the DPA 2021, the industry is not going to gain much. They will gain if they can ensure that the certain Director General is as passive as we have seen them for the years. If you have a TN Sheshan sitting there, then they would fear certain more than the Data Protection Authority of India, because they may feel that it's a 6-member body, a 6 plus 1, 7 members body. Any decision will require a meeting of 7 people, which is always more delayed and perhaps more diluted than one TN Sheshan taking a decision. Unfortunately, we don't have a TN Sheshan in CERT, and that is why there is a feeling that by encouraging the deferment of DPA 2021, industry is gaining something. Okay, but I feel that that is a wrong perception. Geeta, 6-hour reporting timeline. Organizations can develop specific criteria for incident. In fact, if you look at the definition of a cyber incident, it says that cyber incident definition is related to the security policies of the organization. See, cyber breach or security breach is a compromise. So irrespective of your policies, security policies, breach will happen. If it has happened, it has to be recognized. But distinction between breach and the incident is that incident is related to a policy. And I feel, okay, subject to further discussions, and by adopting an appropriate security policy, some of the normal, you can say, the IDS log records about scanning and other things happening on the server can be kept out of the reporting type of incidents. Maybe we'll discuss it subsequently. Is this applicable only to listed and non-listed? No, it is applicable to everybody. It can even apply to an individual who is doing business, because the body corporate definition includes partnership firms, everybody, including individuals who are doing business. This has been again clarified in the FAQ. How many cybersecurity incidents? No, this is a statistic. You should look at certain this thing. You must be aware of this also. Number of incidents are reported. The details of what incidents are not there. Even in the notification and press release, I think they have made a mention of the number of incidents. Maybe you can just refer to that. You will be able to get it. Geeta, 6 hours, not 6 hours from the time of occurrence. Correct. 6 hours is from gaining the knowledge. Okay. That's why I said if you take 200 days to gain the knowledge, then we are talking of 6 hours after the 200 days. But sometime later, the certain may question you, do you have a proper security policy to be able to observe security breaches? You cannot have a very weak cyber security policy, incident management system, and say, I never observed that particular breach. In fact, this again has been stated in the FAQ that you, because the 6 hours is to be counted from the time of knowing, you cannot extend the time of knowing to an extent where it is unreasonable. So probably that is where a further investigation by CERT will perhaps tell you whether you have been acting in good faith. That's all. The fact, the term good faith will take care of most of that. Please share your thoughts on type of logs. It says the log records of all devices which are relevant. We'll look back at the exact sentence and then discuss it with other system people who are here. Is the organization supposed to define its own definition of cyber incident? I feel that cyber incident to some extent gets defined by the organization, but not the cyber breach. Okay, I will again explain to you when we go back to the discussions by showing that definition. There was one slide in which I showed you the definition of cyber breach. I will go back to that. Okay, does the requirement of VPN to store anonymous browsing? Yes, it will be affected. Anonymous browsing will be affected. And that is the point of say cybercrime control. Today, people use Proton email. and many crimes happen. We are not able to get any information. There are servers who are operating in some jurisdictions which do not provide any information to the police. So the anonymous browsing will be affected, but what will say, this has been something which I have already indicated 10 years back in calling for what I called as regulated anonymity. See, anonymous browsing can exist, but the service provider has to have the record of who is the person, and when a proper notice is served on him, he should share the details of the person. So, whereas afterwards, the transactions, when you are sending an email to me, you can send an anonymous email to me. But if I place a complaint with either CERT or the police, and the police asks the service provider who is behind this, then they have to share that information. Today, even Gmail does not share the proper IP address of the sender. They hide that IP address under their own proxy IP address, which means that they are creating a shield for crimes. And actually, lawyers will be quite, capable of filing the case against Gmail or such host providers as persons who are complicit in the commission of the crime. It is like allowing a murderer to stay in your house and not letting the police know about his whereabouts. Similarly, whenever a service provider is reported about a cyber crime, if he is not sharing the information, that itself becomes a crime. So anonymous browsing will exist up to a point, but not when a detailed query is passed on to the service provider. Geeta, if certain, and I will give my opinion and then others can add. Okay, certain enforcement powers derived from ITA, then similar to the personal data rules, there is a vagueness around. Okay, say technical people who are always used to binaries will be uncomfortable about the vagueness, but law is always like that. Law is about interpretation, so some kind of vagueness we should be able to digest. Maybe we'll discuss this again. Okay, when a system throws up an alert, will it be considered as becoming aware? Not necessarily, because this is where you are defining of what is a cyber incident becomes important. So I feel that at least one say human, you can say intervention can be included before actually converting a system into a incident. Of course, people want artificial intelligence and they want to eliminate individual human interference. So if you want to eliminate human interference, then you are getting into a situation that in the dead of the night, your artificial intelligence system is going to say this is a breach. It has to be reported. Then you have to ask the same AI system to report that to the CERT. If you are having a system which is a hybrid system which uses the technology as a tool and humans to take intelligent decisions, to some extent your concern could be perhaps addressed. What about organizational GDPR, where transaction is recreated and relative loss to be shared? Right to be forgotten, data subject. See, if a person has, all data protection laws will always have a clause saying that these laws, regulations will not apply where there is a need for complying with some other laws. Or let us say for protecting the legal liabilities of the organization. This right to be forgotten in the case of GDPR is sometimes handled very casually because there is no say second level you can say monitoring of that. India, that DPA 2021, it says right to be forgotten can be exercised only with the permission of the adjudicator. Whereas in the case of GDPR, right to be forgotten may be received and acted upon by one technical operator who does not know the legal implications. So you have to develop policies in which the right to be forgotten request from the data subject has to be analyzed by a review committee as per your policy, and that review committee will be responsible to understand whether it is talking of a potential crime. If so, you may have to archive a particular data. This is on a case-to-case basis. You will have to look into it. I may not have a perfect solution for this. Okay. Do we need to add some information about sharing logs to take data subject consent? No, the certain is anyway a legal entity. So data subject consent is implied, but you can, and it is there in the act also. The acts always say that the other legal entities have got certain powers. If you want, you can put it in the consent as one of this thing that data will be shared with the legal authorities subject to certain processes. Companies get excuse saying that they have not noticed. Yes, it may be possible, but then you know that there have been instances where further investigations have shown when it was actually discovered. I think one such case happened with Microsoft itself sometime back. So it's possible that certain director or certain or even the inspector of the adjudicator under DPAI may come to your company and go through your log records, go through your systems and identify that you have actually suppressed the information. Then they will know that the punishments will have to be suitably taken up, because there has been lack of good faith. The moment lack of good faith is there, all other defenses will fail. Who in the organization determines when the alert qualifies as an incident? You have to create a system. In the case of personal data, we say that there has to be a committee. DPO will be part of that committee, and it will have the say top level management. So like that, you may have to create a system. Sometimes you may not know whether something is an incident, remains an incident, is a breach or is not a breach. So it may even require a forensic investigation. So those are things which have to be done. But you can always send the report saying that subject to further, say, internal investigation. What if breach occurs at certain systems and transaction logs get disclosed? Probably. Okay, you can always distrust the regulator. Okay, you can take action against the certain officials who have been negligent. Okay, beyond that, I don't want to make any other comments. With this, I think we will stop this share and then go into a discussion. Okay, so others should add now. I have given enough of my views. So let others add their views also. Yeah.
Sir, I would like to add, this is Rajesh here.
Yeah, tell me, Rajesh.
Sir, first of all, I think this is the initiative what CERT has taken. I think everybody from within in our communities are very happy, because so far we all always make ourselves that our country we don't have proper mechanism to report, and many times in soft word we always says the multinationals or the other countries they report the incident, and unfortunately India we never got such type of reported incident, even though in last year Mumbai there was a power cut and everybody was saying it was a cyber attack, but it was like a dabi jaman se hum log bolte, but we don't openly say, because we all know it is a business impact, the reputation loss and all. Now when such type of initiatives are happening, I remember first week of May there was lot of huge noise and cry was there. It used to come in the newspaper, media and all, and I'm sure the certain also must have got n number of calls and feedbacks and all, and that is the reason only today they were made this FAQ. Till there is a time up to 28th of 27th of June.
2 months time they have given.
Yeah,
60
they
days.
have given the time, and in that also, see, it is no. I always feel it. See, the intent is very clear. Intent is there that we need to be, because we are the third largest country in the world. We are getting attacks. So it means that world is trying to hamper our infrastructure. They are trying to challenge us. So there has to be a system should be in place. Now only thing is that up to what extent. That is something I think. What my observation, what I understood, that the main problem will come about the logs, because ICT logs, when you talk about logs, then what type of logs that require lot of smartness, and how much it can impact to the organization, that is organization need to define. See, because certain not said okay, this whole system logs we required. What is said, you need to have a 6 month log should be there, which you feel, it means that they are still, it's like a management system. ISO standards said you defined your risk assessment, you defined your internal issues, you defined your needs and expectation of. So it is organizations. Now if you feel that certain logs are required, like CCTVs, if you are in the critical location, you want to capture the images of all the people who are coming, then you take call of it. So I feel, according to me, only the challenge organizations will be having that how can they manage what 6 months of logs.
Yeah.
And second challenge about, sir, 6 hours reporting, because 6 hours reporting, even though if I report to you maybe night 2 o'clock, can I expect some feedback from you within after what time period? That is also like acknowledgement and response on that reaction on that incident. That is something I thought I'll just share with you, sir.
No, agreed. Now, I want some technical people to talk about whether these requirements are technically infeasible or difficult. Okay, whether it is that time synchronization or other things. Yeah, Ashish?
So just wanted to know one thing, like every organization has a different log solutions, SIM solutions in place. So if we submit that into CERT also, how does CERT is going to implement all those log readers, what we have in place?
Okay.
Organization is small scale, big scale, whatever. So that kind of things, I think it's infeasible for them to read each and every log for doing investigation.
I understand. So probably the industry has to work with CERT and try to see how industry will cooperate in cybersecurity. Say cybersecurity is not something only the government is responsible, none of us are responsible. When it hurts us, then we say that government should come and help us. But in all other these things, we remain passive. So now if you say that you have got different systems, then of log records, and CERT will find it difficult. We are talking of sharing this only when there is an incident. So when there is an incident and you are sharing some information, you have to actually put up a team to work with the CERT. In case you expect them to give you some wise advices, it may not always happen. In 90% of the cases, CERT may not be in a position to give you an advice on how you should respond. At best, they are only trying to get the information whether you are the only organization which has been affected or there are 10 other organizations. Then they will distinguish it from a targeted attack on a particular company or the targeted attack on Indian systems. So we don't expect that CERT will have, say, technical expertise bigger than you to actually provide you the kind of support which you yourself may not be able to do, particularly when we go beyond the SME sector. Okay, SME sector and others may not have the expertise, but larger organizations should have their own expertise. At that time, CERT is first of all trying to collect that information, but then you have to actually set up a sort of a team to work with CERT and sort out the solutions. Maybe they will become enriched with your say expertise, and when some other organization actually comes up with a similar problem, they will be wiser to handle that. So look at CERT as part of your community, then you will not have the difficulty. Yeah, Harish is saying something.
So one more, sir, like in continuation to that, if CERT is working to help us, that's okay. But in the time of breach, the organization themselves are struggling to come over from that breach. If certain start asking questions, it will become more difficult. Like being a government agency is that kind of mindset in.
No, say, Sanjay Bal is a private sector person. You know his background, no? In fact, some people may feel that he is more private sector than public sector man. Even our Minister of State is a private sector person. So we don't expect that the government will be trying to harm the industry. If the tendency is there, we will fight it out. But
no, it's more like person. Yeah, the local folks we are dealing with, like certain directors and ministers will not be sitting for each and every breaches. It should be like, and the incidents like Log4j, where organizations themselves are not aware of, like how it's going to be happen, how it's going to be mitigated. So in that scenarios, it's become more difficult for us to tackle government agencies as well as our internal management.
You are talking of a situation where government agencies will create more problems for you by asking too many questions. I hope it will not happen. It all depends on individuals. Okay. At present, actually, if you submit a report, they will perhaps sit on that for 1 month before they can send a reply. So don't expect them to be too proactive. If we have to wait and see. So, but your concern is definitely to be noted, but that cannot be the something like it will definitely happen kind of a thing.
Sure. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, there are some new people in this group from our FDPPA group. I want some of them to actually respond. Sushant Murthy, Arjit Mishra, Geeta herself is new, Umesh Kumar. Yeah, please.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Firstly, thank you very much for a very informative presentation. As a law student, currently, this is very informative and helpful to me. So my question was, the current directives and even the earlier laws, such as the ITA, do not address the requirements of organizations to disclose a data breach to the consumers who are affected by such data breaches, that your information has been released to this hacker group and so forth. So in your opinion, should such a provision be added either to the current guidelines or the future DPA, wherein within 48 or 72 hours, the consumers are informed? And what would be the pros and cons of such a provision being included?
No, that will be part of the response which the CERT or the DPA will take the decision. They have not made it mandatory today. And in fact, companies are happy if it is not mandatory. Only if the particular breach is, say, evaluated, and then there is really a need for informing the consumers, then either the DPAI or the CERT should ask the company, please report it. I think this provision is there in that the current regulations. So it is not mandatory, but that is what we are expecting as the first response from the regulator. So either you, they may say that you put up a notice in your website, that is the first thing. Then if individual notices are to be given, if the risk is high, for example, if sensitive information has been lost, like credit card numbers and other things, then perhaps it may be essential that the consumers are informed. Like when the passwords are compromised, you have to ask people to reset the password. And there have been instances in Adobe and other things, so they first disabled the current passwords en masse and then reported to the consumers and asked them to reset. So these are all some of the things which we expect the regulator to do. Okay. But making it mandatory, I'm sure many of the technology people, company people themselves would not be happy, because they may say that no harm has happened in this particular thing. If you make it mandatory, it will only create panic in the society.
Yeah, that's true. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Naavi,
yeah.
About this type of cyber security incidents, there is no clarity. Even can be as simple as a phishing.
You please go through the FAQ, which was released, I think, only today. Okay. That document is available on my site, naavi.org. They have given an annexure there, and they have tried to explain each of these incidents. But you know, as a technical person, 100% explanation of a cyber event is always tough. But they have given an annexure. Please go through that annexure. It may be better than the first, you can say, notification.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Tasneem, you have got anything to say? Anupam? Subarna is a new person, I suppose.
Yeah, I met me for the first time.
Yeah. Please keep in touch with FDPP activities. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, can I have one question more, Ashish?
Please.
So, are they going to certify certain SOC providers, like certain authorized SOC providers, where organizations are using SIM as a service or SOC as a service? So that will become a, I would say, good relief where they can work with the SOC providers and identify the use case scenarios, and then they can publish some guidelines. So make clarity for the organizations, because in our security incidents, we are like improving day by day based on the knowledge gained by those particular incidents that's been triggering. There is no, I would say, set rule where we can define each and every logs, what type of logs, what kind of combinations of the logs to get into the SIM solutions and do the all analysis or RCS for them. Sometimes log is in place, sometimes it won't be in place. So how to get clarity on that?
No, see, we have to wait for CERT to actually give, see, if you have got any query, they will perhaps answer it. In fact, see, 2000, when this act came, Information Technology Act, I had contacted a lot of companies, okay, including our Infosys, TCS and others, suggesting that they should start a private sector CERT. For example, at that time, Malaysia and others, the CERT was actually not a government organization. It was either an academic organization like a university, and Singapore, Malaysia, they all had CERT, which was not government owned. But the industry did not respond to that kind of a requirement. And then the government came in 2004 as a department, and now the government has made it a statutory body. So we are, by not being proactive with creating our own self-regulatory requirement, we have actually given an excuse to the government to come up with a regulatory body. But even now, I feel that the industry, if it can come together and have either a sector-wise or any other way, a sort of a private sector CERT, they can have certain changes which can be brought into the system, and they can act as an advisory body. Now, this advisory body, I have told that it is not good. See, what is there? 5 secretaries are there. Only one Mr. Balakrishnan is there. He is there in every mighty committee. And I don't know whether he is having time to do everything. Where is the representation from the industry there? In the DPA, they have specifically mentioned that there will be representation from data scientists, then cyber lawyers and others. Whereas the certain advisory committee does not have a proper representation. But probably that is also because the private sector has not responded with that. Now I feel that now that some of us may not be happy with the regulations which CERT is trying to impose on us, it is for us to actually come together, maybe with associations, industry associations. Can we have our own CERT? Say, the moment we say CERT, it becomes necessary to share some information. We never want to share information with anybody else, particularly if they are supposed to be our competitors. So that is why we are expecting only the government to come in. In fact, in FTPPI itself, I wanted to create a sort of a data related, personal data related, says certain equivalent, but we have not been able to do. At least we want people to report the incidents first, and then we will see whether we have got expertise from within us to respond. But industries can do. People like Ashish can definitely try to see whether you can create a movement amongst the industries, at least those who are willing to share incident informations in an anonymous manner, not considering it as too, onerous in terms of reputation, etc. You can see whether you can create an advisory body and then look at advising the CERTs. See, in FDPPI, when I say I am going to advise the DPAI, the same confidence you should have as a group of CTOs and CISOs who are actually capable. Only thing is they have not given enough time and energy to actually represent their views to the regulator, so that regulator listens to you. Ultimately, you leave it to the 4 or 5 people in Delhi who have got close connections with the ministry to take decisions, which should not happen like that. It should become a professional body, and then you should be able to demand that the certain advisory body, which I showed you, the 5 people with only the Indian Institute of Science person being there, it should be expanded, and your association should demand that one representative from us should be there in your advisory committee. And then perhaps you will have better say in some of the things.
Yeah, because similar kind of changes have been done in US also, when president has signed that bill, Biden, for 72 hours now they have changed. So for critical infrastructure companies and the agencies or the companies that are dealing with the government contracts or federal agencies, so they made it to 72 hours now. So we are improvising on that itself, and then this certain 6 hours kind of clause is also.
Here 6 hours came in because I think RBI had a 6 hours time for banks, if I remember correct. Some of you may confirm it.
Fintech, financial organizations.
That is why CERT did not want it to be more than 6 hours, because then it would appear that the RBI is stricter than CERT. Maybe they will be agreeable to extend it to say 24 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, Satish, Vishwanath, you have got anything to say?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you. In fact, it was a very good session.
Okay.
But in my opinion, CERT guidelines, they're good, they're in time, but on the ground reality may be different from what CERT has in mind.
I understand your concern.
Yeah. I'll come back. I'll give 2 or 3 scenarios where number one, when you were talking about the time 6 hours. See, I do not know who made these rules, but anybody who has hands-on experience on cybersecurity incidents, it's almost impossible for anybody to know what happens in these 6 hours. So,
6 hours is after coming to know. So,
yeah. So, see, 72 hours, what the GDPR you said as the gold standard, all that you said, see, that is more fair enough in my opinion.
no,
And
fine.
6 hours
See,
may not be feasible.
also may relax. I told you 6 hours came in because RBI already had 6 hours.
Yeah. So that is one point I would like to make. The second point is, see, other than these government companies, like NTPC or RBI or whoever it is, who are part of the government or who are under the government control, other than these companies, who in the private companies will certainly not like to disclose if they have any cybersecurity incidents. Because they have a huge stake actually. If for example, if Infi is attacked, I personally do not think they will report, because their stocks will go down, their customers will go. There are so many other things. If they report, so that may not happen in reality. Certain or the government can say whatever they want, but in reality that may not happen. Okay.
Then they are actually not complying with the law. So even if you take listed companies, now if there is a data breach, it needs to be reported to
What I'm
the
saying is, sir, is
SEBI.
there are hundreds of incidents per hour. I mean, that's cyber security incidents. That's exactly what I said, earlier as well. I mean, the government should define what exactly they want, they would like to be reported. The priority, the P1, P2, P3. I mean, the P1, for example, priority 1 ticket says, for example, some, 10,000 users are affected. I mean, something like that. The definition they should come out. The government should come out with such definitions. Today, just if the government says report all cyber security incidents, in my opinion, it's insane. There are hundreds of cyber security incidents per hour in any organization. So, in my opinion, whoever has come up with the rules, they have no idea or no background on working with cyber security incidents at all. So, I mean, it is good to have on paper, but on reality, nothing works.
So these are improvements which can happen.
Yes.
Okay.
But first time it looks like technology is lagging law.
Possible. Say in data protection laws, one thing has happened that where there is a significant harm is mentioned. That under the definition of significance, we can bring in this what Mr. Vishwanath was telling. But whether it is in GDPR or in DPA, whether it's 72 hours are there, even if one person has suffered a significant harm, that is a breach which has to be recognized. So there is no perfect answer to this. Okay, it has to be handled as we go along. But if you say that only 10,000 and above, then everybody will say that I had yesterday 10,000, today another 9,999, and it will be always like that. So the regulation will be like this. Then in implementation, something will happen. Yes, Mr. Kozana.
Yeah,
So
sir, I agree with you, the boys, because if there is no stipulation of any level, then every day 1,000 reports, if it goes from an organization to this, whether this CERT will be in a position to handle them.
No,
It's
no,
just like asking us to give the report.
I want you to
How many
look at the
reports?
definition of cyber incident and cyber breach, security breach. Okay, there will have to be a distinction, and some of the concerns which we are talking of are only like as some attacks which are recognized by your firewall or something like that, which does not result in a compromise. It's like a tangential attack which bounces off. Now, whereas if there is a compromise, actually, if there is a penetration of the attack, then even if say 10 people's information has been leaked, then still we have to consider it as a data breach. So this distinction, as I told you, cyber.
No, sir. We should understand cyber security here. See,
No,
cyber
the
security
cyber
has
incident
three components.
definition.
It is confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Correct.
Okay, what is affected? I mean, just be clearly defined. If the availability, if some server or if some network is down for 2 hours or 3 hours, then it has to be reported. See, going down, a server going down or a network going down is a routine. Even any service provider, he will not promise 100% availability. It will be 99.9%, like that.
Okay, you can put into a definition that in your definition of an incident, if you have 99.99% as the acceptable this thing for the service provider, you put that as a limit. When
that is what I'm saying. So the whole point, what certain guidelines will miserably fail. If every organization has its own definition.
No, say if it is unreasonable, then certain will have to.
See, unreasonability or reasonability will take years to be defined.
Say, no. Say,
so certain should have come out. Certain should have come out with definite guidelines saying that okay, if say 100,000 users are affected, 10,000 users are affected.
Let the industry develop such a norm and suggest it to certain. That's what I'm saying. Why we only want to blame the government for not doing things? We are more intelligent, so we can suggest to them. Then we have to be able to put in some suggestions. Okay, that is why I say that private sector CERT is also possible. So you please find out whether in Bangalore we can create a private sector CERT for say one industry, let us say, then will they come up with making these suggestions? Say, I and you can suggest because we are only advisors, but the CEOs of the company should be willing to come up and say that we will try to give suggestions and we would try to get the certain response to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, I have one more doubt.
Yeah.
Our friend was talking about availability. Is
Hmm.
also a kind of a security, no doubt. That's the definition, it is there. But if for example, I have a shop, I don't keep it open 24/7. I will close it when I want. Doesn't the companies have their liberty to close down their servers for
It
certain
depends
time?
on the
Even
criticality
if it
of
is
the
a public
operations.
service, as long as they are not statutorily given for
Correct,
business,
correct.
they have
See,
every
it's a
right.
question of definition of your service. See, if your service is 24/7 and then if the server goes down, then there is a denial of service. If your service is 9 to 5 and after 5 you close down your server or you give appropriate notice to say that I am working on some server, say rebooting and other things, service will not be available for a certain time and you have
Yes.
given a notice, then that will not be considered as a serious event. So these kind of distinctions, I agree that is an issue, but at the same time, industry also should respond, is what I say.
So in that
Naavi,
scenario,
sir.
maybe like example of Shopper Stops being online portal will come under that 6 hours time, but Shopper Stop retail portals might be like they would say, okay, it's going to be shut for 6 to 9, and then they will be relaxed for that. But
Yeah,
online
That's
portals needs
no,
to be
That's
like
the
that.
individual
Availability.
liberty. I can open it for 1 hour. I'm not, don't want to do business. Is it not?
No,
I'm
no,
not
no, no.
charging anybody.
See,
If that situation,
online portals,
yeah,
even in
agreed,
online
sir.
portals, you can say that. Online portals, you can't say that. Where customers, if you are doing business, it needs to be 24/7.
I'm
Wherever
doing my
customer wants,
individual
they can.
business. As long as I don't want to do business for certain hours, I'll close it down. See, I am not
Yeah,
legally or statutorily bound by taking everybody's business. I don't want business. I have this stock I have completed. I don't have stock of any item. I don't want to have one.
it's
Have my
okay if something.
e-commerce portal for
Yeah,
such things. It may be dangerous
it's
for my
okay.
commercial angle, for my
It's
business
okay.
eye. This one, agreed.
Yeah.
But it
It's
doesn't mean
okay.
government can
When
insist,
if
insist as an
Sir, you
incident.
if
cannot,
breach
sir,
triggers in the
you cannot
evening,
make the site down. You cannot make the site down. But you can say the next shopping will be done by so and so time.
yes,
You
yes.
cannot say the site down. Site
Every day
down
you
can
can
be
put.
there.
Yes,
Yes.
it's not feasible also, or not. It's good for business also. It's not good. Or even
What we
if
are
you are
doing the
closing it,
logical, what we are doing the physical business and the logical business is the totally two different scenarios. You
exactly.
cannot say Amazon.com site. If the site is not accessible, then it is the question of something must have gone wrong. And so somebody was talking about availability. That is the internal upgrades. And for that also they will put a banner over there. Currently the
Maintenance.
site is on maintenance. That's why.
Yeah.
Means
Yeah.
there is a two ways of interpreting the e-commerce today in our country.
Yeah,
And if you close it
From
also for certain hours, if some
Yes.
incident trigger in that
Yes.
time duration, next
Yes.
day when you are identifying that, post 6 hours you can report it to certain that way. It's not needed that you have to report in immediately in the night time only.
No, the way I see it is they are referring to how the masses are going to be affected. If you're an online shopping, portal and not being available, how does it impact the masses? As against if you're a power provider. So
See,
if you're
I want to say it is my interpretation. I feel we all know that our neighbors are troublemakers, specific to the China. So they knows about it. If they want to, stop our economy, if they feel some type of threats are coming and some sector of industry getting impacted, they can take immediate action. Please understand the incident also. They need to classify the impact of that incident. If it is a smaller sector, some incident or some small companies are reporting, they may take a different way of resolution or maybe interpretation, because we currently don't know, because they have not disclosed what is inside or what type of operational they must be having inside the CERT now after the 27th of June. They must have outsourced this activity to the like any third party IT company who must be analyzing the things with the subcontractor peoples.
good. Anyway, thank you, friends. I think this discussion will, of course, be endless. Manju.
Just one line, sir. It could be a reality check for certain also. Maybe they have come up with something and gradually they will
Possible.
abilities and potential, and then
Yeah,
they can change or give some relaxation.
Yeah. I want industry to be responsive. That is what I'm saying. See, I'm actually saying that these are the rights which CERT has got, duty which it has got. Okay. But having said that, industry can always respond and try to get things as they think is more reasonable if it is required. Okay. Yeah. Manju, please take over.
Thank you, Naavi sir, so much. It's always a pleasure to listen to Naavi sir, because he's not just imparting knowledge or sharing his views. He always prompts us to think beyond what is the obvious, and that is what I felt today also after this session. And thank you everyone for joining this discussion, making it more lively with your views and opinions and questions. Thank you.